Have you ever had a person in your life who saw you? I mean, really saw you for who you were and who you could become? For Mitch Albom, that person was his college professor, Morrie Schwartz. This wasn't just any teacher-student relationship. It was a deep, soulful connection, a friendship that felt like it would last forever. Morrie was more than a sociology professor. He was a mentor, a guide, a coach for life, as Mitch would call him. He taught with such passion and joy, making every lesson about society feel personal, like he was handing you a map to navigate your own heart. It was in his classroom that Mitch felt truly alive, encouraged to ask the big questions and to not be afraid of the answers. Their bond was special, built on shared lunches, long conversations about the meaning of things, and a genuine affection that is so rare and so precious. Morrie had this incredible way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when he spoke to you. He gave Mitch nicknames, offered him wisdom wrapped in humor, and made him promise to stay in touch after graduation. It was a promise made with all the sincerity a young heart can muster, a vow to never forget the man who had opened up his world. This relationship, forged in the halls of Brandeis University, was the foundation for everything that was to come. But life, as it so often does, has a way of pulling us in different directions. The currents of ambition, career, and the sheer busyness of living can sweep us away from the shores of our most cherished connections. The promise to keep in touch, made with such heartfelt intention, began to fade. The weekly calls became monthly, then yearly, and then they stopped altogether. Mitch was pulled into the fast-paced world of sports journalism, chasing deadlines and success, while Morrie continued to teach, to dance, and to live with that infectious joy. The silence that grew between them wasn't born of anger, but of neglect, a slow, quiet drifting apart that many of us know all too well. This story, at its very core, is about the power of second chances. It's about rediscovering a connection that you thought was lost forever, and in doing so, rediscovering a part of yourself. It reminds us that the most profound lessons often come not from books, but from the people who have known us and loved us. Tuesdays with Morrie is more than just a book. It is an invitation to look at our own lives, our own relationships, and to ask ourselves who our Morrie is. It is a testament to the idea that it is never, ever too late to say, "I remember you," and to find your way back home. Let's go back to the beginning, to the sunlit classrooms of Brandeis University in the 1970s. This is where a young, hopeful Mitch Albom first met Morrie Schwartz. Morrie wasn't your typical professor, hidden behind a lectern and a stack of dusty books. Oh no, he was a force of nature, a man who danced his way to class and whose lectures on social psychology felt more like intimate conversations about life itself. He challenged his students not just to learn the material, but to question everything, to form their own philosophies and to build a life of purpose. For Mitch, this was like finding an oasis in a desert. He was captivated. Their connection deepened outside the classroom walls. They would have lunch together, where the topics would stray from sociology to the bigger, messier stuff: love, life, what it means to be a good person. Morrie saw something in Mitch, a questioning spirit, a tenderness that the world hadn't yet hardened. He gave Mitch his undivided attention, a gift so powerful it can shape a young person's entire sense of self-worth. He called Mitch his friend, closing the gap between teacher and student and creating a space of mutual respect and genuine care. Morrie became Mitch's own personal coach, guiding him through the anxieties and dreams of a young man on the cusp of adulthood. One of the most touching parts of their early bond was the nickname Morrie gave Mitch, Player. It wasn't about sports. It was about being a player in the game of life. It was Morrie's way of encouraging Mitch to be an active participant in his own story, to not just sit on the sidelines. He pushed Mitch to write an honors thesis, believing in his potential long before Mitch fully believed in himself. This kind of mentorship is a rare jewel. It's the kind of support that instills a quiet confidence, a belief that you have something valuable to offer the world. It's a gift that keeps on giving long after the classes have ended. And then came graduation day, a day filled with caps and gowns, and the bittersweet feeling of an ending and a beginning. Mitch gave his beloved professor a briefcase, a token of his immense gratitude. It was on this day that Mitch, with all the earnestness of youth, promised to stay in touch. Morrie, with his knowing smile, likely understood the weight of that promise and how easily it could be broken by the demands of life. But he accepted it with grace. This promise, this final moment of their first chapter together, hung in the air for 16 years, a silent testament to a bond that was too strong to be erased completely. After graduation, the world came calling for Mitch Albom, and it called loudly. He initially tried to pursue his dream of becoming a musician, but the rejections and the harsh realities of the industry wore him down. The idealism of his college days began to erode, replaced by a growing cynicism. The world he entered was not the compassionate, thoughtful place Morrie had encouraged him to build. Instead, it was a world that measured success in dollars, bylines, and public recognition. The profound loss of his favorite uncle to cancer was a turning point, a moment that seemed to slam a door on his youth and push him toward a more conventional, driven path. He threw himself into his work, becoming a relentless and incredibly successful sports journalist. His life became a whirlwind of airports, deadlines, press boxes, and celebrity interviews. He was chasing something. Success, security, maybe a way to numb the disappointment of his earlier dreams. The person he was becoming was a world away from the young man who sat in Morrie's office, questioning the very nature of success and happiness. He was accumulating possessions, accolades, and frequent flyer miles, but he was losing something far more important, his connection to himself and to the people who truly mattered, like his old professor. The promise to call Morrie was buried under an avalanche of responsibilities. Life just got in the way. It's a story so many of us can relate to. We have the best of intentions, we truly do. We promise to call our parents, to meet up with old friends, to write that letter. But then a deadline looms. The kids get sick. The car breaks down. And the promise gets pushed to tomorrow. And then the next day, and the next. For 16 years, Mitch's tomorrows never came. The warmth of Morrie's friendship became a distant memory, a faint echo from a life he no longer felt connected to. This long silence is such a powerful part of the story because it's so deeply human. It shows how easily we can get caught on the treadmill of life, running so fast that we don't even notice what we're leaving behind. Mitch wasn't a bad person for letting the connection fade. He was just a person who got lost. He was swept up in a culture that celebrates being busy, a culture that tells us that what we do is more important than who we are. The silence wasn't a rejection of Morrie, but a reflection of how far Mitch had drifted from the values Morrie had tried to instill in him. The reunion didn't happen because of a letter or a phone call. It happened, as so many things do in our modern world, through a television screen. One night, Mitch was flipping through the channels, just kind of going through the motions at the end of another long, exhausting day. He felt numb, disconnected, really just looking for some kind of distraction. And then, all of a sudden, he stopped. He heard a familiar name on Ted Koppel's Nightline show. The name was Morrie Schwartz. Mitch froze, remote control still in hand. Could it be his Morrie? The man he hadn't spoken to in 16 years. His heart must have skipped a beat. There on the screen was his old professor, looking smaller and much older, sitting in a wheelchair. The show was detailing Morrie's battle with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, a cruel and unforgiving illness that slowly deteriorates the body while leaving the mind perfectly sharp. Ted Koppel was interviewing Morrie about his approach to dying. But Morrie wasn't talking about dying in a sad or fearful way. He was talking about living while dying. He was sharing his wisdom, his humor, and his incredible spirit with the entire world, just as he had once shared it with his students in that small classroom. For Mitch, this moment was like a lightning bolt. It was a shock that jolted him out of his self-imposed trance. Seeing Morrie, so vibrant in spirit yet so frail in body, brought a flood of memories and along with them a tidal wave of guilt and regret. 16 years of silence suddenly felt like a profound betrayal. How could he have let so much time pass? How could he have forgotten the man who had meant so much to him? All his success, his awards, his busy schedule, it all felt so hollow and meaningless in that one stark moment of realization. The man who taught him about life was now teaching the world about dying, and Mitch had been absent for the entire lesson. That television interview was the catalyst, the spark that reignited a long-dormant connection. It was a second chance, delivered through the most impersonal of mediums, yet carrying the most personal of messages. Mitch knew in that instant that he had to see him. He had to go to Morrie, to break the silence, to apologize, and to listen. He didn't know it yet, but this decision to finally make that trip was not just about visiting a dying professor. It was the first step on a journey back to himself, a journey that would begin with a simple, hesitant reunion and blossom into the most important classroom of his life, Tuesdays with Morrie. When Mitch finally arrived at Morrie's house, he was just, honestly, filled with apprehension. 16 years is a long time, and he was no longer the idealistic student Morrie once knew. He was a man hardened by the world, a man who kept his emotions in check. He half expected a lecture, maybe some sign of disappointment for his long absence. But what he received was the complete opposite. The moment Morrie saw him, his face just lit up with a pure, unadulterated joy. There was no anger, no guilt trip, only love and a warm, welcoming embrace. Morrie's first lesson began before a word was even spoken. Forgiveness and unconditional love are always possible. Their first official Tuesday meeting began with a conversation about the world. Morrie, despite being confined to his home, was more connected to the world's joys and pains than ever. He read the newspaper every day, feeling the suffering of people in faraway places like Bosnia and the sorrow of local tragedies. He told Mitch that the most important thing in life is to create your own little culture. The big culture, the one that bombards us with messages about money, power, and fame, can be toxic. He urged Mitch to build a personal culture founded on love, compassion, and what truly matters to the human heart. This was a profound idea for Mitch, who was a product of that very big culture. His entire life was built around the values Morrie was asking him to reject. Morrie explained that we must be strong enough to say no to the things that don't serve our spirit. We don't have to buy into the idea that more is always better, or that being busy equals being important. Instead, we can choose to invest in family, in community, in loving relationships. This first lesson was the groundwork, the foundation upon which all the others would be built. It was a call to wake up and consciously choose the values that will guide our lives. As Mitch left that day, he felt a shift inside him. The awkwardness and guilt he had arrived with were beginning to melt away, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. He had come expecting to comfort a dying man, but he was the one being comforted. He was the one receiving the lesson. Morrie had given him a new lens through which to see the world and his place in it. He wasn't just a dying professor, he was a master teacher, and his final class was now in session. The promise of staying in touch was finally being fulfilled, not out of obligation, but out of a deep soul-level need to listen. On his second visit, Mitch found Morrie weaker in body, but just as sharp in mind. The topic for this Tuesday turned inward, to the very natural human emotion of self-pity. Mitch asked Morrie if he ever felt sorry for himself. It was a direct, almost blunt question, but Morrie, as always, met it with honesty and grace. He admitted that, yes, of course he did. He allowed himself a little time each morning to mourn what he had lost, the ability to walk, to dance, to use the bathroom on his own. He would feel the sadness, the anger, the grief. He would cry if he needed to, but here is the crucial part of the lesson. Morrie didn't stay there. He gave his sorrow a time limit. He would allow himself the full depth of his mourning in the morning, and then he would stop. He would detach from the emotion and turn his attention to all the things he still had: friends who visited, the love of his family, the ability to think and to share his story. He explained to Mitch that it's okay to feel sorry for yourself. It's part of being human, but you cannot let it consume you. Wallowing in self-pity is a dead end. It stops you from living the life you still have right in front of you. This was a revelation for Mitch. He, like so many of us, had been taught to either suppress difficult emotions or let them take over completely. Morrie was offering a third way to feel the emotion fully, to honor it, and then to consciously let it go and focus on what is good. It is a practice of mindful detachment. It's not about pretending you're not sad. It's about acknowledging your sadness without letting it become your entire identity. This lesson is so powerful because it gives us permission to be vulnerable while also empowering us to take control of our inner world. As Mitch absorbed this wisdom, he saw how it applied not just to someone who is dying, but to everyone. We all face losses, big and small. We lose jobs, relationships, our own youthful strength. It's so easy to get stuck in what we no longer have. Morrie's lesson was a practical guide for resilience. Feel the pain, but don't build a house there. Acknowledge the mourning and then turn your face toward the sun. This second Tuesday was about learning to dance with sorrow, to give it its moment on the stage, and then to gently guide it into the wings so that joy could have its turn. The third Tuesday, the conversation turned to one of the heaviest topics of all, regret. As Morrie's body continued to weaken, his insights into the human condition only grew stronger. He and Mitch began to discuss the things we wish we had done differently. Morrie was not immune to regret, but his illness had given him a unique clarity. He saw that so many of our regrets are born from the same source. The things we didn't do, the love we didn't express, the chances we didn't take. He wasn't haunted by the things he had done, but by the moments of connection he had missed. Morrie shared that our culture doesn't encourage us to think about these things until it's too late. We are so focused on the next achievement, the next goal, the next rung on the ladder, that we forget to tend to the garden of our hearts. We put off the important conversations, we hold on to pride and ego, and we assume we will always have more time. Morrie's lesson was a gentle but firm wake-up call. Don't wait. Forgive yourself, forgive others, and live in a way that minimizes future regret. The time to say I love you or I'm sorry is always right now. This hit Mitch hard. He was living a life that was practically engineered to create regret. He was so driven by his career that his relationships, including his marriage, were taking a back seat. He was a man running from his emotions, just as he had run from his connection with Morrie for 16 years. Morrie's words were not an accusation, they were an invitation. An invitation for Mitch to look at his own life and see where he was prioritizing the urgent over the important. It was a lesson about living with intention, about making conscious choices that align with love and connection, rather than ambition and ego. Leaving that third Tuesday, Mitch was quieter, more reflective. The lessons were getting deeper, more personal. He was beginning to see his own life through Morrie's eyes, and he wasn't always comfortable with what he saw, but discomfort is often the starting point for true change. Morrie was handing him a roadmap to a more meaningful life, a life with fewer regrets. It was a call to stop running, to turn around, and to face the people and the feelings he had been avoiding. The classroom was no longer just Morrie's study, it was becoming Mitch's own soul.